among the second, okay. Among the secondary sources are three papyri that were written about 1800 BC. One is called the Egyptian Mathematical Leather Roll, the Berlin Papyrus, and the Rosner Papyrus. So as we start gathering what's written in hieroglyphics or the hieratic script, like all these papyruses, these are what are part of the cache of papyri that Euclid was brought to Kemet to translate. But we're looking at now, Euclid himself was born sometime around in the 300s BC. All right, he doesn't get a hold of these until after 323 BC. So let's look at what he's translated into Greek. Now, the Almas Mathematical Papyrus, I mean, this is one picture of it. Again, quite simply, you can Google these and Google them and then go to the images of them and all of these documents, and you'll actually see the papyruses laid out. But in order to try to fit it into this screen, it's just condensed down. But this, in other words, these are mathematical problems that's written out in hieratic. All right. So the Greeks couldn't read this, but with the assistance of Egyptian priests, clerks like Euclid were basically allowed to translate these and rewrite them in Greek. But this is one. And it's like I said, the second name of this is the Rhind, R-H-I-N-D papyrus. Okay. All right, the Almas Papyrus, all right, book one of it contains arithmetic and algebra. Book two contains geometry, like volumes, areas, and pyramids. And geometry and mensuration, most geometry is related to mensuration. The Almas contains problems of the areas of the isosceles triangle, the isosceles trapezoids, quadrilaterals, the frustum, the circles, and curvilinear areas written in hieroglyphics or the hieratic script. This is a representation or a picture of the Berlin Papyrus. It's called Papyrus 6619, one of the earliest medical and mathematical documents written about 2000 BC. Okay, already written out about 2000 BCE. So again, way before Pythagoras is born or shows up. And the Berlin Papyrus of 6619 is one of the primary sources of ancient Egyptian mathematics. One of the two mathematic problems on the papyrus may suggest that the ancient Egyptians knew the Pythagorean theorem. Now, the person who wrote this was being nice to Pythagoras by saying the Egyptians may have known. Of course, the Egyptians knew the Pythagorean theorem. You couldn't build the temples, you couldn't build the pyramids if you didn't know that mathematical formula. The interest in the question may suggest some knowledge of the Pythagorean theorem, though the papyrus only shows a straightforward solution to a single, second degree equation and one unknown. In modern terms, the simultaneous equations x squared plus y squared equals 100, and x equals 3/4 times y. Reduce a single equation in y. In other words, it's a mathematical representation of what is now called the Pythagorean theorem. All right, but from the notes and replaying of this lecture, as you take notes and look these things up yourself, you're gonna find Brother Tehuti didn't make any of this stuff up. This is all real, and especially the dates of it. This is a small view of part of the Moscow papyrus, and again, this is showing like the trapezoidal-like figure or truncated isosceles triangle, and you see the hieratic script that is written in. And once it's translated into Greek, it becomes the book of proposition or the book of elements. When you see it written in Greek and then translated from Greek, the book of elements, of course, is given. The author of that is Euclid. Now, the Moscow mathematical papyrus. Again, it doesn't take in-depth research to get started. You go straight to just Google it, and enough information comes up by Google it, and you can read a number of mathematicians' views on all of these papyri, and again, come to understand that all of this mathematics is older by 1,500 years than the Greeks coming into Egypt in the first place. Now the dates attributed to the writing of this papyrus is sometimes between 1950 BCE and 1850 BCE, sometime during that 100-year period. And the Moscow mathematical papyrus, here's the name, also named the Golenischev mathematical papyrus after its first non-Egyptian owner. I just think it's cute. Egyptologist Vladimir Golenischev is an ancient Egyptian mathematical papyrus containing several problems in arithmetic, geometry, and algebra. The text was most likely written down in the 13th dynasty and based on older materials, probably dating to the 12th dynasty of Egypt, roughly 1850. Again, geometry problems. Let me move this. 7 of the 25 problems are geometry problems and range from computing areas of triangles to finding the surface area of a hemisphere, problem 10, and finding the volume of a frustum, which is a truncated pyramid. So as more and more of these documents are found, we know that ancient Egyptian mathematics was in place. What wasn't in place is the name geometry. All right. It was just mathematics, a section of their mathematics. What Euclid did, he kind of codified these problems and called the measurements of areas. That's what he called geometry. That's what the Regis poem means about Euclid was the first to counterfeit geometry and then called it masonry. Man. Another thing, problem 10 of the Moscow papyrus, dated to the Middle Kingdom, is a geometrical exercise on the calculation of an area of an object called, actually that's Nebet. Occasionally, geometrical problems in Middle Egyptian papyri contain sketchy diagrams in order to facilitate the intelligibility, but not in this case. Now let's look at the curriculum of the ancient Egyptian mystery system. The curriculum of the ancient Egyptian, the Egyptian mystery system is said to have consisted of the following subjects: what's called the 7 liberal arts, which form the foundation training for all neophytes and included grammar, arithmetic, rhetoric, the dialectic. And those 4 topics grouped together are called the quadrivium. The second part, geometry, astronomy, and music, is called the trivium. So the trivium plus the quadrivium together makes up the 7 liberal arts. And the other part of the Egyptian mystery system was called the sciences of the 42 books of Hermes. And I should have been more exact. That's how it's called today. That's what they are called today. But originally, actually, they're the 42 books of Tehuti. Not me, Tehuti, but the original or the originals. All right. Now, Albert Mackey. We all know Albert Mackey here in American Freemasonry. All right. Albert Mackey, in his Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, talks about this Hermes character. Hermes, in all the old manuscript records, which contains the legends of the craft, mention is made of Hermes as one of the founders of Freemasonry. All right. Thus, the Grand Lodge manuscript number 1, whose date is 1583, and the statement is substantially and almost verbally the same in all the others. To try to read this, the great Hermanes, that was kubisam, that which kubye was semison, that was no song. Now that's Old English. This same Hermes was afterwards called Hermes, the father of wisdom. He found one of the two pillars, all right? And he found the science, the two pillars of stone, and found the science written therein. And he taught it to other men. So again, a character called Hermes, in fact, his full name was called Hermes Trismegistus. And you'll see that again written out later. Here we have Henry Coyle, quite an intellectual in American Freemasonry, and he has his own encyclopedia that he put out, updating Albert Mackey in a way. Now, in his chapter on Hermes, he says, Hermes Trismegistus, a name about which a great deal of confusion has existed, possibly for centuries. It's found its way into Freemasonry through the legends and the Gothic constitutions, which related that after the seven sciences had been inscribed upon two pillars, and after they had gone through the flood, Hermes, also spelled, see where I got that name Hermes from, also spelled differently, found one of them or had it brought to him, and so he preserved the seven sciences, including particularly geometry or masonry. Sometimes he is called Hermes Trismegistus. Excuse me. And it says, see the Gothic constitutions. Now, Hermes Trismegistus. Trismegistus is a Latin term that is the Latin form of the Greek term, which means 3 times great. So Hermes 3 times great is who Henry Coyle in his encyclopedia and Albert Mackey in his encyclopedia give assertion as one of the founders of the craft. And this Hermes is an Egyptian. Now, if you get the 2017 edition of the Lexi Tenebris publication of the Phylaxis Society, the 5th article, I call it chapter 5. The name of that article is Hermes Trismegistus in the Legends of Freemasonry. It's an article I wrote. And it details, in fact, it's a quite detailed explanation of whom Hermes Trismegistus was. Actually, his Egyptian name, like very similar to mine. He was known as Brother Tehuti. All right, he was Tehuti, and he was called Tehuti 3 times great in ancient Egypt, long before the Greeks ever showed up. And the best thing about the article, it details the books, and one of the books that you can get is written by a American Freemason called the letters GRS Mead. It's called the Corpus Hermeticum. I should have added that to this slide presentation, but the Corpus Hermeticum probably is the most complete set of documents that has come down to us from the ancient world. That's part of the Masonic knowledge base and should be in every Freemason's library. This Keynote, what's important about this Keynote, I'll move this up here, is that over here on the right, this is a what they call an obelisk, right? That was erected by one of the last Black pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Keynote was the city where the temple of Thoth Tehuti was located. The Greeks renamed this city Hermopolis, so the city of Hermes, or Hermes Trismegistus. But this black siltstone obelisk of King Nectanebo II, all right, this was erected by Nectanebo II. According to the vertical inscriptions on it, he set up this obelisk at the doorway of the sanctuary of Tehuti, the thrice great Lord of Kemetic. It is now on display at the British Museum in London. The actual inscription, this is my note on the bottom, the actual inscription reads, Tehuti Ao Ao Ao, A-O-A-O-A-O, meaning Tehuti great, great, great. That's where the term 3 times great or thrice great comes from. It comes from an inscription. And in the next slide, I got part of a blow up of what's really written on the obelisk itself, this black soapstone obelisk. It's Tehuti Ao Ao Ao, or great, great, great. That's where the term Hermes Trismegistus was created from this ancient brother. And a thing about, I'm going to use a nice term. I'm going to call it European superiority. Once Europeans, especially the Greeks, have gone in and have put their names on things, European academia has never or has always continued with the names the Greeks gave it. As we know, the land of Kemet, like in every book you read about it, 90% of the time it's called Egypt. The Egyptios is a Greek rendition of the name of the Smatawi of the United Two Lands. Again, like Tehuti Ao Ao Ao, Tehuti great, 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 once the Greeks got there and associated Tehuti with their god, the Greek god Hermes, down to this day, the brothers' writings are called the writings of Hermes Trismegistus, again, using a European terminology. So an innocent researcher can get lost thinking that either this Hermes Trismegistus was Greek or Roman and not a black man, like other Nile Valley. That's the tragedy or the arrogance of European superiority. Once they have changed something and given it their names, Western academia contends to support the changing of those names. And that's how sometimes we get lost or can't find information about ourselves. All right. Okay. And again, Tehuti 3 times great, looking at, how you would see it in the Metra Netra or the hieroglyphics, that's a form of the name. Get out of that real quick. So what do we have? Like in the Kemetic mystery system or its system of initiated priests, I call it the Kemet mysteries, all right? In the second column is the Roman and European guilds, and then in the last column are European lodges. So in the Kemetic mystery systems, were individuals initiated into it? The answer is yes. Were they initiated into Roman and European speculative guilds? Yes. Are they initiated into European Masonic lodges? Yes. All of that's the same. Is knowledge taught by degrees? In the ancient Kemetic mystery system, the answer was yes. In the Roman European guild structured classes, the answer was yes. In the European Masonic lodges, the answer is yes. The 7 liberal arts, were they taught or part of the ancient Egyptian mystery systems? The answer is yes. Were they part of the Roman guild classes for speculative Masons? The answer is yes. Are they part of the education process or the initiation process into European Masonic lodges? The answer is yes. So in structure, what came up out of the Nile Valley came up out of Kemet, continued into the Roman guilds as the Western Roman Empire was conquered in 476 AD, even though the Eastern empires kind of stayed intact. But when the Roman Western Empire was conquered by the Vandals, I think they were the first group of people who came up and overran Rome. Europe went into its dark ages. In the late 800s, one of the European kings, Charlemagne, was successful in reuniting Europe under his banner. And in doing so, he creates the Holy Roman Empire. the Holy Roman Empire now comes under the influence and of the Roman Catholic Church and the popes. And once Europe is under all of Europe now is under the auspices of the Universal Church of Rome. All right, now Rome dictates what is and what isn't, and what, like what's heretic, like what's allowed and what's not allowed. And it is during this time period in 924, between 924 and 980, that King Athelstan comes to the throne in England. And what is happening now? Well, with the advent of the Holy Roman Empire, the construction of castles, churches, and cathedrals get underway in Europe, all constructed out of stone. Now there's a need for stone masons, these speculative masons, right? They are in great demand, like to have churches, cathedrals, and castles built for the ruling class, like in the church. So with the advent of the need for more stonemasons, the old Roman guilds, the styled after the old Roman guild system, moves up into Europe, and now they're European guilds, and it's in these European guilds where classes are held from time to time on a regular kind of basis, actually not just teaching the craft of building in stone and all that's needed to be known to do that, but they are also teaching some of the as part of the mathematics, the astronomy, the sciences of the 7 liberal arts are classes as such. So from 900 up through 1700, over a great swath of time, right? You have this structure in place that where during some period, they start allowing non-builders to come to the classes, because you couldn't learn, the 7 liberal arts are not taught outside of the guilds. So for the sons of the ruling class who wanted the sciences that were being taught, they are the civilians or the non-operative masons who start attending these guild classes in secret. And it is from them attending these guild classes in secret over a period of time that there's a separation between what we call operative masons, and now this speculative masonry. These speculative masons start appearing as such. All right, it wasn't one event or one activity, but it was a period of time that this evolved. Another part of the story that I'm still working on, I don't have enough information to publish it yet, but it's the legend of the Egyptian princess named Scota, Scota. Now, Scota is said to have been an Egyptian princess who married a European man who came to aid her father, the king of Egypt, while he was at war with somebody. The details are not very clear, but after he assisted the king win the war, the king rewarded him by allowing him to marry one of his daughters. So he sent an entourage of Egyptians in several boats with his daughter back to what is part of Ireland, all right, with this entourage. When they arrived there, there was a war going on between the guy she married, family, and some other folks. So when they arrived, they joined right in the battle. All right, helping her husband's, the Egyptians helping her husband's people defeat the enemy. She was killed in the battle, and she's buried at a place today called Scotus Glen in a part of Ireland that where instead of the entourage turning around going home to tell her father what had happened, they decided to stay. And in the area of Ireland, or that part of those islands where they settled down, today that is known as Scotland. That's where the name Scotland comes from, this woman's Scotia, all right? And it is if the king or the pharaoh sent an entourage of artisans of all kind to go with her to go settle in the new land where she was going to settle down with her husband, it is my speculation that there were also some builders in that entourage. And so what is called Scottish Freemasonry, not the Scottish Rite, but Scottish Freemasonry has a different history than English Freemasonry as such. And I'm trying to find that link, like of actually how the Scottish Freemasonry, the origin of it, and whether Scottish Freemasonry arrived in what is now Scotland with this entourage from Egypt. I don't have enough proof to make the assertion yet, but I'm doing some research trying, that's the research I'm working on. But getting back to this particular, this is a Coyle's Masonic Encyclopedia, Henry Wilson Coyle. You can look this up. If you don't have a copy, again, I don't think you can download a PDF of it, but you can order a copy of it on from Amazon, and perhaps the chapter there will want to have it in the chapter's library. The Encyclopedia of Freemasonry by Albert Mackey. Again, you can get a copy of it and have it in the chapter library, just to look up the terminology, like that I mentioned earlier, about, especially on Hermes Trismegistus, who that was. Another book that I would highly recommend for you to take a look at and perhaps study is this one on the right by Albert Churchward, The Origin and Antiquity of Freemasonry, and its analogy to the eschatology of the ancient Egyptians. A very important book. This was written, there's been much more information developed since Churchward wrote his book, so some of his information is dated. And the last book is this one by Manly Palmer Hall's Freemasonry of the Ancient Egyptians. I'll rate it a C+, but I picture it because, again, in what we call mainstream Freemasonry, all of this information exists. It doesn't seem to exist in Prince Hall Freemasonry. Where I take an exception with both Manly Palmer Hall and Albert Churchward is the use of the term the antiquity of Freemasonry. Masonry didn't get the adage free added to it until it reached Europe. And again, from their own explanation, Freemasonry, they were called Freemasons because they could cross borders. They go from state to state to ply their craft. And these were the operative Masons, the guys who were actually building the castles, building the churches, and building the cathedrals. They could travel all across Europe, like without a passport. Their passport was the fact that they were initiated operative Masons as such. So what was in ancient Egypt wasn't Freemasonry. Masonry was in ancient Egypt. The geometry that Euclid counterfeited and called Masonry, that's what was in ancient Egypt. Freemasonry didn't exist as a term. That's not a term that existed in the Nile Valley. So when people are presenting information, trying to prove or disprove, oftentimes they mess up by using the term Freemason to try to extend it back to the ancient Nile Valley culture. But there was no Freemasonry in ancient Egypt. Freemasonry, of which we Prince Hall Masons we are assimilating into European Freemasonry. We are part of the craft that was organized structurally in 1717 by the Grand Lodge of England was constructed. And you know, like, and again, the brother William Preston in his book Illustrations of Freemasonry, you know, like, again, is talking about what was constructed in England starting from that period moving forward. So understand that masonry, as we know, masonry is an ancient Kemetic concept. You know, like, it was based on the mathematics, geometry, and it comes from the what Euclid did. The primary purpose of the mathematics of shapes in the Nile Valley was remeasuring the land after the Nile River flooded each inundation. The way the waters came down and all of the silt being brought from all the way from the foothills of the Mountain of the Moon, which is Mount Kilimanjaro, all of that water rushing north to the Mediterranean, and all of that rich black soil from Central Africa rushing down that river would be deposited along the banks of the river once the water receded, as such, right? And the lands, the people's farms, the towns, everything had to be measured again. And, you know, they were measuring with ropes and measuring the land. That's what a lot of the those ancient documents are referring to, the land measurement. And again, land measurement is the term that came, the mathematical use of land measurements is the term that Euclid translated into geometry and masonry as such. So there was no craft, there is no term. I read a book some years ago, the brother, I think he meant well, but there is no PHREE masonry nowhere in the hieroglyphic language base of the Nile Valley. So that term didn't exist in the Nile Valley at all. We don't have to make up stuff to show the antiquity of the craft, of the initiated system of bringing brothers in through an orderly initiated process. Again, that's the ancient Egyptian school system. Yes, that existed. There's another lecture I did on it's called The Most Sacred of Places. When the Greeks came along, they changed the name of the most sacred of places to Thebes, where they're in Thebes and Karnak, downriver, upriver, closer to Abu Sima, closer to the heart of Africa. That's where the great temple was laid out. And this greatest temple in Egypt that was laid out there is the temple where what I would call the third degree is administered, where the final graduation takes place. That temple is the Lubitz. You can look up the book called The Temple of Man, or The Temple in Man, and just understand that in the final classes, as they progress from the feet of that temple in those classrooms, as they progress to the head of that temple, where you know, like, what's analogous to the head of that temple, they learn that the highest lessons in the craft that is taught, it's about you as man. The temple itself is laid out as a man's body. What came out of that is not just nonsense, but the highest level of knowledge that one was seeking in the Nile Valley as they entered under the feet in that first archway. Man, know thyself is written. All right. And at the end of the process, you know, like when they're up there at a place in the temple that if you put your two fingers right up here on your head, right here, since you were a little kid, your mom called this what? That's your temple. All right. And the most sacred place in the temple, you know, like where this corresponds on our bodies, our heads, is where the statute of the quote unquote, where the divine or God is explained. And that is the God in you, the God in the temple. So at the end of the process, one is learning in the Egyptian mystery system that the initiated priest graduating is a divine being. That's the purpose of going through that initiation system. So that didn't translate, that didn't get to Europe. That's not part of European Freemasonry. Even though European Freemasonry, in a way, when you go through the various houses across the craft, not just what we have in Prince Hall Masonry, again, the object of reaching the end of the journey is understanding the divinity of ourselves. And with that, gentlemen, I will, I think that's the last slide. Yes, I hope I didn't take up too much of your time. I want to thank you for allowing me to give this presentation. And in fact, let me bring this back because maybe there's some questions from the presentation and I can see your questions now. Brother President.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Everyone, please join me in a round of applause for Brother Tehuti Evans. Appreciate the time that you've taken with us today, the diligence of your research, the clarity of perspective, and the articulation of your ideas and your interpretations. We now open the floor for anyone that would like to ask any questions of Brother Evans. Don't be shy. Any questions you got? I'm sure he can handle it.
Yeah. By the way, I'm sitting, I mean, my screen, I'm sitting in the Grand Lodge room of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. If you ever visit the state of Pennsylvania, the city of Philadelphia, take the tour of the Grand Lodge building. And when you go inside and you see this beautiful Egyptian temple room, that's their actual Grand Lodge room. There are several. In fact, I'm working on a presentation for Brother Menzie, where I'm putting together slides of the various Grand Lodge buildings here in America that are all designed to a very elaborate way after the ancient Egyptian temples. And so it's something that they know that we don't know in Prince Hall Freemasonry. Again, one of the oldest Grand Lodges, Ben Franklin's Grand Lodge. It goes back to him, 17, I think the first lodge met in Philadelphia about 1730 something. But again, the way these brothers express their tribute to ancient Kemet, this is how they designed their Grand Lodge. Their primary Grand Lodge meeting room is an Egyptian temple. And there are several that have done that. Here in Washington, D.C., a lodge that I visited several times, it's called Naval Lodge number 4. The lodge room is the Egyptian temple room. So the mainstream Freemasons, in fact, there's even at Galveston, Texas, all right? There's a lodge room that's designed after, again, the ancient Egyptian decor. So what do they know that we haven't brought forward since 1775 in our history to decorate ourselves in tribute to our ancestors in the Nile Valley, which is the foundation of the idea of the craft? I just, hey, that's why I use this as my background screen for the presentation. I'm sorry to have cut in, but now I will answer questions.
Okay, that's powerful. Thank you for explaining that. I'll have to visit our Masonic Center here in Cincinnati. We have 100,000 square foot Masonic Center. And it is quite elaborate. And, some rooms, when you open the door, you open into a stadium. It's a phenomenal, but so we'll have to start looking for those Egyptian symbols based upon your lecture. Any questions anybody has for Brother Evans?
Brother Evans, when you have gone to other jurisdictions, especially like what was described in what the brother just described in Pennsylvania, or excuse me, in Cincinnati, and where you are in Pennsylvania, how much resistance have you felt from others in sharing history with you? And is that something that needs to be emulated within the Prince Hall family?
Good question.
Emulated is not the right word. Imitated, excuse me.
Actually, I haven't felt any resistance. One of the best visits that I've made in my travels was to the Cedar Rapids Hour, and at the Scottish Rite Temple there in an annual session, and I was one of the presenters. I presented on what we all know as the Egyptian Book of the Dead, as such, and calling it its correct name, the Pert Im Heru, and explaining the translation of what that actually means, as opposed, it's not the Book of the Dead. We all, most of us know that. There are some Egyptologists and even some chematologists that have settled on the Book of Coming Forth, a Book of Coming Forth by Day. I disagree with that. Again, I'm sure you all have heard of Brother Jacob Carruthers out of Chicago. Before he passed away, he was a member of ASCAC. I got a chance to meet and talk with him. I traveled, my last trip to Kemet was with Dr. Ben, and got a chance to have in-depth conversations with him. And what I learned is the correct name of that document is the Book of Coming into the Light. And when you understand that the word Heru, it can be an adjective, it can be a noun, it can be an adverb. I mean, the way the Medu Neter is used in the language and what for it could be day, but what the book is, it's a ritual of a brother in life. It's his ritual of initiation. The allegory is he's going through death, because he's a dead man walking and he's on his way into light, as such. So when you read it, you like breaking it down and reading it, even when you get to the room where the 42 admonitions of Mayat are discussed. Again, that's, you're not held responsible in life or death for anything that you haven't pledged yourself to do. So it's given in a negative sense, but in the actual initiation drama, this is where a brother is pledging, I shall not steal, I shall not commit murder, right? All those 42 things, they assert in a very positive sense. And then once one goes through that whole process and found to be truthful, then he becomes an Asar. I probably got the most outstanding reception, especially following that lecture amongst the members of, the white brothers there. In fact, afterwards, one of the members eventually got in touch with me, paid my airfare to Scottsdale, Arizona, to spend a weekend with him and 4 friends, and to 4 friends who were, high degree Masons who he thought needed to hear that lecture. So I've had good reception when I visit with brothers on the other side. I think that I think a lot of white Masons, especially the higher Masons, those with advanced degrees, know the origin of the craft, and they are some degree astonished to find finally there are brothers in Prince Hall Freemasonry that are beginning to lecture or teach about ancient Black people's role in creating, the mystery systems in the craft and what those things are. So all of my receptions have been very positive. Thank you.
So are you saying that they are focused on Kemet and focused on Egypt, or excuse me, on Kemet?
Yeah, in some places, yes. Again, look at the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. Again, my background. This is an actual room in Philadelphia, in the Grand Lodge room. They know. In fact, when I was out in we was out in New Mexico, and again we went up to Santa Fe, and the Santa Fe Scottish Rite Hall. And it was explained to me there. I mean, they have they have the brothers. They have the surrender of the brothers at Grenada in 1492 as part of their background, right? They actually have the Black Arabs or the Moors and showing, like them giving over control back to Spain, back to the white folks.
Wow.
And like it's our journey from captivity and enslavement to beginning to reclaim ourselves. Like in when I was a little kid back in the 1950s, like I was like everybody else, a Negro, the name the white man that created for us and stuff. By the time I entered college, I'm with that first group of college students who started calling, who found out we were African and started calling ourselves Afro-Americans as such, right? And finally, by the 1980s, we adopted the term African and African American. So we are just coming back to open up to know ourselves and who we are as a people. Some of us are still asleep and influenced by the terms that were given us by people who wanted us to stay asleep and not know who we were. Like if we start designing our temples, making our rooms in our temples look like this, one of the things they do is make a lot of money from people having wedding receptions and all kinds of things by renting out their room for social affairs. And that they make enough money to run their Grand Lodge based off of the revenue they generate from just civilians wanting to come in and have something in a beautiful surrounding like this. Again, we are asleep. There's a generation coming along now behind me. Again, discussing with Brother President Jackson, where I am on this journey. Well, when I look at younger brothers in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they are not as adverse to our Africanness as some of the older brothers. I got an older brother here. He's in his 90s now. One of my mentors, Brother Cooley. He hates he's the one that chastises me the most about talking about all this Black stuff or this African stuff. But the younger brothers who've grown up and been educated in a different environment, they are more open to this. In fact, I personally think that the future of Prince Hall Freemasonry rests upon us fully awakening. I think the younger generation will be more apt to want to come join the craft as we give it more of an African view. Hey, that's just my personal opinion. I just think that more of us are open to that. And no, the white lodges, and again, I'm not dealing in racism, but the white lodges, especially, they have some houses or some adopted bodies on the other side that we don't have in Prince Hall Freemasonry. And again, my primary mentor here in Prince Hall Freemasonry is Brother Alton Roundtree, my voucher. And when he was made a member of the Blue Light Society, the Blue Friars Society of Mainstream Freemasonry, that's their writers wing, right? I accompanied him there. And even though I wasn't a member, I was allowed into the meeting, had a pretty good time and learned about some houses and divisions over there that we don't have in Prince Hall Freemasonry. So we're still a fraternity in a growth process. And I think as the 21st century extends, if we want to grow and keep up with the times, we're going to have to be relevant with where the minds of our young men are, more so than staying strict. We've adopted the craft strictly assimilating to Eurocentric Freemasonry as it developed and what it is, accepting the arrogance of the English mind. Remember, at the time that England started all of this, they were great colonizers. There was a time, I don't know how many of you ever heard the phrase, the sun never sits on the British Empire. That was a standard statement during the 1950s and the 60s. When I first went to Howard, that was a phrase, just like America expanded from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. You heard the term manifest destiny. See, these are terminologies that Europeans created about themselves. I think they've done a pretty good job with the elements of the craft. I have I'm not anti-Freemason. I just think that we are old enough and mature enough. And as we're looking to grow and get more men coming into it, that we're going to find that there are fewer brothers that are interested in just a straight assimilation into what the Europeans have set up. And this is the craft. The craft has always been more than what they have put forward, especially as we go back and understand the 47th proposition of Euclid. Actually, he copied that, all right, off an ancient Egyptian document. He didn't create it. He didn't write it. Pythagoras didn't create the theorem, like of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Yet for our young boys, 8 to 12 or whatever the age is, what we call our young male youth that we bring in, they're knights of Pythagoras. We don't, they can't, that won't develop anything in their heart. That won't develop anything in their soul. But if they understand that they're knights of an ancient Egyptian mathematical system, if that's what knights of Pythagoras is supposed to be, everything we've done has been to set up an imitation of or adopting a white view of the world. Prince all Freemasonry in the future to grow, I think that to make it as interesting and sought after fraternity by the young Black men in the future, that we're going to have to introduce them to some Blackness in it.
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
So, oftentimes we hear the term Egyptian mystery system.
Mm-hmm.
And, those of us that have read a little bit about Isis and Osiris and so forth, and, that we think that we know what it means, but really, the question is there one system? And if not, then why do we use that terminology, and what does the terminology mean? Great question.
Actually, it's only a mystery to non-Egyptians. All right. But the term has been used to classify all of the systems, all of the educational system of ancient Egypt. See, they are initiated, you had to be initiated into a system to become a stone cutter in ancient Egypt, to become a blacksmith, the Shimshu Haru, the first group that had a secret initiated system. All right, you had to be initiated into it as such, right? But the system, the term generally applies to the schools of the high priest. Again, that was taught at the Grand Temple at Thebes. That's where again, the 7 liberal arts, all of these things, but the curriculum, it included more than just the 7 liberal arts. And so, but that's the complete system where the priests, the bureaucrats who ran the country, different dynasties would come and go, but the country continued along for thousands of years. We're dealing with less than 300 years of the United States of America in terms of a timeline. We're dealing with from, if you want to accept their calendar, which I don't, from 3050 BCE, that's 3,000 plus, we're dealing with 5,000 years of a country's existence. We're dealing with 4,000 of it before they were totally conquered and, came under the influence of foreigners. I'm talking about the Arabs and what have you. So we're dealing with a society that lasted, a culture that lasted thousands of years. And the primary reason that I think that it did was because of what was called the priest class, especially the priests of, you have the Temple of Amun, which is upriver. Downriver, you have the Temple of Anu, what they call Heliopolis. In between, you have the Temple of Peter. All right, they call it Ptah. I think it's a pronunciation problem, but the Temple of Peter. In fact, now I won't go there. I don't want to be that disruptive. But the temple at Kemetic, where the scribes were taught and what have you. All these temples taught specific skills on the one hand, and you had the temples that were dedicated to the different perspectives on creation. If you're going to talk about the creation of the whole thing, universal creation, you're dealing with our moon. If you want to deal with the solar system that we're in, the sun and our little planets going around it, you're dealing with the temple of Heliopolis, the temple of Anu. That's only dealing with the solar system. If you're dealing with the creation of man, like from man moving forward, you're dealing with the temple of Peter or Ptah, as some people mispronounce it. So it depends on which temple that lessons are being taught and what the purpose of those lessons were. The overall drama of the Osirian mystery, as it's called, the story of Isis, Osiris, and Horus. The latest rendition of that in the American movie system is the Lion King. The Lion King is an adaptation of the Osirian myth. All right, you got Osiris, you got Mustafa, who's killed by his brother. What the other lion, the mean lion that killed Simba's father.
Scar.
Yeah, see now little Simba, the lion cub, is taken off into the wilderness by the monkey or the ape teacher, which it represents of Tehuti taking Horus out away so that Scar couldn't kill him. It's the Osirian drama that's made into an animation, made a movie. And so that's our ancient story, and it's brought back as a movie. You can't deal with the story of the virgin birth, without dealing with, before Jesus, there's Horus. The exact same story. There are 188 attributes of Horus that equals the 188 attributes of Jesus in the Bible. All right, just straight up. But again, I don't want to, I'm not anti-Christian, but we need to really go back. We were in captivity and given a religion, and we accepted it. And the thing that has hurt us more than anything else is we accept the proposition that what we believe is more important than what we know. That's why we still half asleep. Knowledge always trumps beliefs. Knowledge always trumps beliefs. But yet I believe in this, I believe in that, as if what we believe is important. So a religious system based on a belief system, as opposed to based on a knowledge base. The ancient Egyptian religion was based on a knowledge base. The sciences in the books of the 7 laws of the science of the universe. There's a book, it's called Ancient Future, written by a brother named Chandler, that deals with these 7 laws. The duality of opposites, look at those 7 principles that govern and run the universe. That's the science of the universe. It's not based on a belief. And so we were knocked off of our center during captivity, and our minds was remade by our captors to be what they wanted. And we're trying to recover ourselves based on his rules of looking at the world and what's important to us. He's the one that instilled the idea in us that what we believe is more important than what we know. He told, hey, there's still some Black folks who believe that white folks are better than us. There's still some folks who believe a whole lot of dumb stuff that, that in order to survive captivity, to survive the enslavement, the crafty story of the craftiness of the brothers in slavery, pretending to be dumb, and hey, you want to show the white man how smart they were. Hey, the idea that hey, the primary developers of the Underground Railroad were Prince Hall Masons up north. Read the story of Reverend, what's his name, Josiah Henson. Reading the story of Frederick Douglass. Hey, read the story of what's his name, Lewis Hayden, who became Grand Master in Massachusetts, who was also a conductor of the Underground Railroad and also the unofficial chairman of the Boston Vigilante Committee or Vigilance Committee that were capturing and running slave catchers from the South out of the North. We were quite crafty and, quite intelligent. Brothers hadn't gone to college and gotten any degrees, but they were, we were, innately intelligent. That's why there was so much progress made up to a certain point. Within 20 years of coming out of captivity, if it wasn't for the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, we were well on the way of becoming independent and outperforming the white man, even in the South. Tulsa, Oklahoma wasn't the only place that got burnt down in 1921. Their jealousy because of the rapid progress, even during segregation, the laws of Jim Crow. Look at what those brothers created in Tulsa. There were other cities. There were other riots that Europeans or white men exhausted on us during that period because of who we were and how intelligent we innately are. But once we accept their definition of us, once we try to look at the world through his paradigm, through his box, we limit what we can do for ourselves. As such. So yeah, I'm sorry, I kind of drift, Brother Jackson. So you got to keep me in line.
Well, that was great.
I get passionate about some of these topics.
That's exactly why we have you here. We got a lot of passionate folks that want to learn. So appreciate you imparting the knowledge. We have just 5 minutes left, and I'm not sure if anybody else wants to get a question in before we conclude today.
I just want to congratulate my professor on a great lecture as usual.
Brother Urso.
And you see, I had to put the qualifier, my professor. But hey, I think I have an answer for what you were looking for in your lecture. There's a book called The History of St. Mary's Chapel, #1, The Rise and Progress of Freemasonry in Scotland.
Okay.
And I think the answer you're looking for will be in there.
Okay, hey, I'm making a note. In fact, will you, when this presentation is over, give me a call.
All right, I'll put 3 hours aside.
Okay. That's for you who don't know. That's Brother Urso from Florida. The Philaxis Society is where I met him. We've become close. I enjoy our conversations. Brother has a lot of knowledge. He's done a lot of good work down there in Florida. I appreciate him being on to hear this lecture this evening. Thank you, brother.
Always, Professor.
All right. We have quite a few individuals in the mix. See, we have Brother Roundtree with us and Brother Dudley, Brother Garner. Is there anybody else that has any other questions?
All right. Brother Roundtree, I didn't get any.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I do. Is there a way we can get that your PowerPoint presentation for our own personal records?
Oh, yeah.
I understand. I train. I write curriculum, so I get it.
Well, I'm writing a piece, and a lot of this will be, I'm writing this up, and a lot of this will be, in the content of, I won't call it a book, but, and I have a very good friend that is, she works at the Library of Congress.
Okay.
Some of you may know her, Dr. Sybil Moses, and she has beaten me up intellectually for giving away my documents, to brothers and sisters, meaning well. It's it's a lot of work going into doing the research and putting all this together. What I'll do is this, Brother Jackson, you did record this presentation, didn't you?
That's correct.
All right, and so it'll be available to see again. I contact the chapter. And
yes.
I don't know if it's going to be available on through YouTube or what have you, but the presentation will be available.
It will definitely be available with your permission, sir.
Oh yeah, hey, I agreed to do this for you. It's your chapter's property, the lecture. So so putting it up on YouTube and what have you is good. you know, like, or however brothers can tune in, you know, like to take a look at it. I have no objection to that at all. But for me to actually send out copies of the presentation, the PowerPoint itself, I'm a little less gun shy and reluctant to want to do that. And I hope the brother will understand.
I understand. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
We
That's
started
brother,
the lecture.
Brother Johns.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We started the lecture with about maybe, we started recording maybe 10 minutes in. So when you get this, you're gonna miss the first 5-10 minutes, whatever it is. But most of it is in the recording, and we will make it available. Someone asked, where will it be? Most of us learned about this because of either a Facebook post or a group me or direct contact. So however you learned about it is where it's gonna be. So
Okay.
you're getting it passed along through those same channels.
And Brother Johns, are you in the Cincinnati chapter?
That's Brother
Yes,
Garner.
sir.
All right. Well,
Yeah, John Garner.
get in touch with Brother Bradford Holt, and he'll give you my email, and email me directly. And
Okay, sure
we'll
will.
continue this. We'll continue this through email.
Yes, sir.
And we'll make sure that you get a copy of the recording, sir. Usually, as soon as we hang up from a Zoom call, it immediately downloads to my computer a copy of the recording. Of course, I say that, but the last 2 lectures, it didn't do it. So hopefully it'll do it this time. And then I'll go ahead and provide a copy.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. And I just want to thank my lodge brother and my voucher who's online, Brother Roundtree. Thank you, sir, for all that you've done for me. I wouldn't be a Freemason if it wasn't for you. and I just want to give you a shout out. And you're like what I call the most prolific writer in Prince Hall Freemasonry, Brother Alton Roundtree.
Absolutely. One of the greats, and the editor of Flaxus magazine. We thank you, Brother Tehuti Evans, for being with us today, sir. You have enlightened us. We are privileged to have been in this space with you. And we appreciate all of those who were able to attend tonight, and those who weren't. You'll have the opportunity to view this entire presentation. And so we look forward to you being able to do so. But what a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Again, we just had Brother Tehuti Evans join us and to deliver a lecture entitled The Kemetic Influence on Freemasonry. And this is part of the Marifa chapter of the Flaxus Society of Ohio's lecture series. And it's been our pleasure. Good evening, everyone, and have a beautiful and blessed day.
All right.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Brother Evans.
You're quite welcome, Brother Holt.